Good morning, everyone. Hope you all are doing well. Let's go ahead and take a look and see what's going on with Bitcoin for the day. So I mentioned yesterday in the Sin City Crypto Group that we could basically hit 72K when we were in the 69-ish range. We obviously went there and we're bullishly consolidating. So it's looking really good for Bitcoin. We are well above the 200 MA, even on the daily as well, not just the 12-hour. So here's the thing. As far as bias for me goes, I do think that we flipped into an uptrend for now, at least. I don't think that we're going to just immediately go to a downtrend. I am expecting for us now, if we can consolidate, to start taking out these double tops, 77,000, 82,000. Like, I'm starting to kind of think that we're going to start getting up into these higher levels because of how we are consolidating. Now, that being said, the only problem is that we are very far extended from the 21 on these larger time frames. If we are extremely bullish, just know that we will probably make some sort of sideways flag here. I'll probably make it shorter here, but we'll probably make some sort of sideways flag and consolidate for a bit, having the 21, slowly creep its way up into price action, right? So that's going to be your bullish scenario, is you stay consolidating within a range, and then you start to get the 21 meeting price action on these bigger meso time frames. You're having to have the 8-hour, the 10-hour, the 12-hour, and the daily 21s all catch back up into price action. When it comes to the 6-hour and the 4-hour, they're getting closer. They are still very overextended. Like the 4-hour even is very overextended, all the way down to 66,000. The 2-hour is at 67,884. So, just know that at one point we're going to have to consolidate sideways. This would maybe be even a good time around the 72-ish range if we can. Consolidate sideways, let the 21 come back into price action like it is on the 1 hour, and then move up from there. Like I said, that's going to be your bullish case scenario. Not that it's going to necessarily happen that way. We could also do what's called a twisted sister, and also, we could potentially even come down a little bit. But the point being, either way, you're going to have the 21 come meet into price action. I'm going to shrink this a little bit. But the 21 is going to have to come back into price action, whether it be coming down a little bit, whether it be going sideways. Either way, it's going to have to happen. Now, what we don't want is we don't want a rollover, right? That's one thing to watch. We don't want this to just kind of shoulder, and dump, right? This obviously doesn't have a wick, so definitely a very strong bullish sign on the 1 hour. The 8-hour, we also barely have a wick. We might not even get one. But just be aware, if you are trying to catch the top here, we are very, very overextended. And that's something that, we have to really wait and be patient to see, where price action is going to go, where it's going to consolidate. We did re-enter a new range. So actually, let's take a look at that real quick. Let me pull up Bitcoin in another chart. I don't know if this is probably a good area here. Let's see. All right. Let's pull up Bitcoin in a new chart on the bigger time frame and kind of see what range we're in, okay? All right. So obviously, we've kind of honestly left this range right here. This was from the previous consolidation period that we had. So now we're getting up into the premium of this range, right? This consolidation range that we had. So the top of it is 73,857. We are now in the premium because we are above the dealers, basically the dealer's range of 61,447. So we basically kind of tested right below it, dropped into a slight discount, and then came back up. This is now our new range. And technically, you could say that we're kind of back within this range of this year. So let me pull from this bottom to this top here and see where we're at. So we dropped into the 786, a little bit lower even from this bottom, but you can basically see that now we are slightly, so within this range right here, we are slightly above the midway point. So it does give us room to keep moving up if it wants to, right? We're not really at a point yet where we're considered major premium unless we're considering this previous range right here. If it's this previous range, we are in the premium of that range. So there is a potential that, depending on what range we are currently in, I'm going to probably speculate and say that we are within this range because this is the more recent range. You know, this is all the way from February to, you know, current basically to August. But you know, there's a potential, just know that this could be our range as well. And if this is our range, we are well into the premium of this range. So that being said, you know, there's a potential that we could get a retracement if we are in the major premium of, you know, the current range, depending on where you pull from. Now, if you're going to be pulling from the much larger weekly range, you know, if I pull from all the way up to the top, obviously we're going to be in a major discount here. Yeah, so I mean, we're way, way, way below the midway point here. So just keep that in mind, guys. I mean, it's all speculation at this point, but it's going to depend on what range Bitcoin is in, because we are kind of somewhat getting close to exiting this previous consolidation range. We're staying within this range, obviously. You know, this tops out at around 83,000. And then, of course, there's a much larger range on the weekly that goes all the way up to 120, you know, 6-ish thousand, right? So this is all going to depend on where we are within the range. Now, taking a look at levels, as far as levels go, you know, 72.5 is going to be crucial for us to get above and stay above. You know, obviously we're using it as resistance right now. 73,676 is going to be your next area of resistance to the upside, followed by 75,879 and 77,421. We briefly went over those yesterday. And then obviously to the downside, you're going to want to see 70,780 hold, which would be the midway point of this order block that I just drew, as well as 69,317. And then, you know, obviously we can get to the bottom of this order block, the top of this one, that type of thing. So it's all going to be dependent on, you know, if we can hold the 70s, that's going to be a really good sign for Bitcoin, and the fact that we could probably very bullishly consolidate and then get a nice move up into the mid to higher 70s range. It's all going to depend, though, on what it does, you know, after we do top out for the week. If it's going to just bullishly consolidate, or if it's going to actually start having a pullback. That being said, guys, let's go ahead and take a real quick look at liquidity, see what's happening there. I'm going to dive into the 4-hour because I found that interesting today. I was taking a look at this earlier. So taking a look at the 4-hour, the only negative here is that you took out the 25x, you took out the 10x, you even took out, you know, some of the bigger 5x area. You know, obviously you can get up into here, right, which would be starting at 73,800, 73.6-ish, which is the bottom of kind of this block of liquidity. But we are now diving into the 5x pool of liquidity, and it is getting more scarce, if you could say. So, you know, there's not as much, there's not any 10x, there's not any 25x anytime soon until you get to about 76,000. Just know that, you know, at any given time, because of how much liquidity we took out to the upside, we would have to at least consolidate somewhat or get that pull back just by a little bit. Doesn't mean we have to come all the way down here. We definitely could. Don't leave this out, even though we are extremely bullish. But just be aware that, you know, there's a decent chance we could at least come back even to the point of 67.5 to test this support line as well. So it's all going to depend on how far it wants to drop back down, if that is going to be the case. Let's take a look at the 1-hour real quick. All right, so taking a look at the 1-hour, you can basically see how we have the capability, if it wants to just keep moving up, right? We have a lot of liquidity still to the upside. You know, it doesn't really end, the red liquidity at least, until like 78,005, 78,006. So, you know, there is a potential that we could get that really solid move up if it wants to. Doesn't have to, but just know that there are some bridges forming to the downside as well. You know, especially if I zoom in here, you can see them. That could potentially take us all the way down to 67.5, which is going to be a crucial level for us to hold. 50x kind of showing the same thing. You know, you could potentially get a last kind of last hurrah up, right, to about 74, 75,000. But realistically, you know, how much longer can this move go with the 21 so far extended, and no consolidation really on those higher time frames? You can see also what's interesting is that your trend is back at a zero. It was extremely bullish on both the 4-hour and the daily. It's the 4-hour and the 1-hour. It was extremely bullish. The daily's been neutral this whole time. But you can see how it just kind of fell off recently. So definitely something to keep in mind. Obviously, this trend of indicator is not 100% accurate by any means. But it does usually tell you when a trend is slowing down. Let's take a look at the 15-minute. So the 15-minute, obviously, you know, like I said, you have that capability to get up here into the 74-ish range. Whether or not it's going to do it is a bigger question. You know, and like I said, on the bigger time frames, the meso time frames, you are well overextended. So just be cautious. If you are longing this right now, just be aware that you could definitely lose this trade. I'm going to potentially think about entering if we can get down into the 70,000-ish range again, or even into the 60s. I'm going to watch this very closely to see how price reacts to like the bottom of this little, you know, basically area of liquidity if we were to get down there. But just be aware that we could definitely just kind of plow all the way down into this yellow area if it wants to. All right, that being said, guys, that is what I have for you as far as liquidity goes. Taking a real quick look at your order book, you do have a bigger size order that, you know, that's coming and going to the upside around 72.9. That can definitely be used as an area of resistance for right now. Especially earlier, we kind of had these two lined up in a row, so it didn't even allow for this this order to really be filled. This got pulled before it was able to be filled. So it is kind of, they are playing games with it right now. These bots are playing games. There are a lot more smaller orders to the downside, obviously getting you down into 70,000, you know, 750-ish area. That's an 18.55 million Bitcoin order. That's not too small, but it is smaller, obviously, than the 46 million that's above us. So that being said, guys, that is what I'm seeing, at least for right now. You know, let's take a real quick look at the simple map, see if we can identify any levels to watch here for the day. So as far as levels go, thankfully to the downside, we do, like I was telling you guys, we have a lot more support areas. So, you know, your first area is going to be around 71,850. You lose that, you can kind of roll through basically to about 71,000 even. And if you lose that, you'd be looking at about 70,920 and then to about 70,500, which is kind of where I've been eyeballing, is around 70,500. And then to the upside, you're going to have to get above 72,870 as your first area of resistance. And then if you're able to get above that, you'd basically be able to reach about 73,140. And that's going to be a very, very strong resistance area, because after you reach that, you can kind of fall through all the way to about 74,190. So 73,140 is going to be a prime target for you to watch as far as resistance goes to the upside if we were to get up there. And then for your swing time frames, let's see if anything differs from the scalping time frames. Let me zoom in here. So 71,850 is going to be your first area of support, like we mentioned. You lose that, you can get above to about 70,000, sorry, around 71,000 even, and then to 70,920, somewhere in between there. You lose 70,920, you basically fall through at about, what was it, right here, 70,530. So 70,530 is going to be my prime area of support if we were to start losing some of these levels here. And then to the upside, you know, you're going to have to get above 72,870. You're able to do that. You can basically roll through to about 73,140. And that's going to be, like I said, your prime area of resistance prior to being able to get up to 74,000-ish area. All right, guys, that being said, that is what I have for you for this morning. I hope you all have had a wonderful trading week. I've made quite a bit of money on, you know, with my actual accounts. So, you know, it's been a very profitable week. I'm extremely happy with how this week turned out. And as usual, guys, if you want to use TradingDifferent and its tools, highly, highly recommend it. You basically were able to see this move before it came using TradingDifferent's tools and the liquidity. Feel free to use my code Sean if you want to sign up for this amazing tool suite and get 10% off your order. TradingDifferent.com/code/Sean to be able to identify trend and see where all of the liquidity is at across multiple exchanges. All right, guys, that being said, that is what I have for you. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you all later. Take care.